everyone, my name is Nicole Fegan, and I watched 15 films in September of 2021. That's like a remarkably solid number for me. My goal is always to watch a movie every other night, but I feel like I kind of average 11 to 12 per month, so I'm feeling good about my watching of movies. This month we had a lot of 3.5 and 4s, but we had one all-time favorite and one all-time least favorite, so let's just dive into all of them. Up first, I watched Gone Girl, directed by David Fincher, which I gave 3.5 stars. You probably know at least a little bit what Gone Girl is about, though my boyfriend, who I watched it with, knew nothing about Gone Girl, and I, despite not having seen or read it, was like, how have you somehow avoided, like, any spoilers about Gone Girl? But this is about a man whose wife goes missing. He comes home from the bar on their anniversary, and, like, the house is disheveled, there's kind of blood in places, and, like, it's clear that something has happened. She is the Gone Girl. I refuse to say anything else for those of you who know nothing about what this film is about, but I feel like the conversation about this film usually revolves around gender and marital dynamics and, like, what it is to be a woman in relationships, man in relationships, all of that, which is interesting, but I thought the part that was, like, more interesting to me is I feel like this film is about miscommunication and about how, like, we can't inhabit other people's minds or lives. The film begins and ends with this voiceover about, like, wanting to know what the people we love are thinking, and I just feel like at the core of this film are, like, two people who are so deeply fucked up, and instead of communicating anything, they play games and they pretend and they act around each other in lieu of forming anything genuine. You get a lot of flashbacks, you get to, like, see, like, their relationship forming, and I feel like a lot of people kind of, like, choose sides. You know, like, Nick did nothing wrong, Amy did nothing wrong, whatever, and I don't really give a shit about that because I feel like they're both fucked up, and this is a film about miscommunication, which I thought was interesting. Next, I watched Duck Soup, directed by Leo McCarey. This features the Marx Brothers, and I also gave this 3.5 stars. This is about a man who becomes president of this bankrupt country and declares war over another country over his love for this woman? Truthfully, the plot of this movie doesn't really matter. I mean, it does, but, like, this is a comedy that just features how absolutely whip-smart the Marx Brothers are. There's just so much quick wit displayed in this film. There's also some slapstick comedy, which is just, like, never really my thing, but, like, the actual jokes, I feel like if you did, like, a study on, like, jokes per minute, this film would, like, reign supreme over everything I've ever seen, at least. I really like being able to see how this clearly influenced some, like, more modern types of comedy. I say modern, but, like, I'm thinking of Monty Python, and I like getting to now watch this, like, after having been a Monty Python fan my whole life. I think it's really solid. The reason it doesn't have a higher rating is just because, like, I do think there are certain forms of the comedy that felt kind of outdated. Like, you know, comedy is something that either, like, works for you or doesn't, while there were times I was respecting it more than I was enjoying it, and that's just, like, always kind of a problem for a film. But it was very good, from 1933, so if you're looking to check out something from the 30s, I do recommend this. A film I don't fucking recommend is Beautiful Boy, directed by, what's his name, Felix van Groningen, which I gave 1 star. Let's talk about that. Beautiful Boy is about this young man who is an addict, and about his father, who's his father. The young man is played by Timothée Chalamet, the father's played by Steve Carell. I started my review on Letterboxd for this film with "This movie can suck my dick and fuck off right into hell," which I still believe. I have a few key problems with this film, and it all comes down to the fact that I think it has zero empathy for its subjects. It has no time for its subjects. The only thing it cares about is getting some kind of rise out of the audience in lieu of telling their stories. The father is clearly disappointed in himself over the fact that he has, like, raised an addict. He thinks he is a failure as a father, and while that's a predicament I can understand, I think the film repeatedly shows him as a villain, and really has no time for his struggle outside of the times when, like, he's just, like, displaying anger. He seems constantly unreasonable, even though I do believe the things he's feeling are reasonable. And then you have Timothée Chalamet's character, who, by the way, this is based on, like, a real story, so, like, it's a character in the film, but also, like, it's based on this man's actual plight. This film tries to take place over such a long period of time that literally his, like, drug addiction storyline gets montaged. Like, it seriously feels like an after-school special. Like, Sigur Rós is playing in the background, and this man's life is falling apart, and we're just, like, montaging through his entire college years. And yeah, I'm not completely anti-montage, but, like, the way it happens is truly just, like, inspiration core porn, whatever the fuck. Ultimately, I don't think this movie wants you to care about its beautiful boy or about the father. It wants you to fear becoming him. It is like a PSA against doing drugs. It seriously just like, it has no time for caring about these characters, caring about how they might feel. It just shows you the worst moments, so it scares you into becoming them. And it's just so terribly done. My blood was boiling as I was watching it, and I hope no one I love ever has to watch it. Moving on, then I watched Best in Show, directed by Christopher Guest. I give this 3.5 stars, and this is a light-hearted mockumentary about dog shows. We follow a few key couples and their prized dogs, and then it culminates in the dog show scene, during which Fred Willard, famous comedian, is one of like the commentators, and he is just spit firing jokes up, down, left, and right. I thought this was one of the better mockumentaries I've ever seen. I did not like This Is Spinal Tap, and I think that's the same director, so this was a pleasant surprise for me. I just thought this was way funnier and better done. I think kind of the common consensus is that like Fred Willard's stuff is the highlight of the movie because he's an incredibly funny man, but I personally preferred watching like the stuff with the couples because the stuff that Fred Willard says is like so unbelievably absurd and funny that like I can't imagine it happening. But like these couples and their lives are obviously absurd enough, but also believable enough that it's just like, it's just so funny. I don't know if there was anything especially wrong with this film, or just like its genres are not things that like I'm especially drawn to. Like I don't really have any desire to ever rewatch this. I don't know if it would like come to my mind if like when I was recommending comedies.
My camera cut out briefly, but I thought this was a good film.
Next I watched Trainspotting, directed by Danny Boyle. I gave this 3.5 stars as well. And this is about a man kind of immersed in the Edinburgh drug scene, who then tries to get clean and get out. For some reason I had negative impressions of this film before I watched it, so I was pleasantly surprised. This is like a very gross film, both in terms of like tone and visuals, but it's obviously intentionally so. It creates this kind of scuzzy, gross atmosphere because they're living scuzzy, gross lives. I think what I liked most about this film was actually the camera work. There's this one scene where the main character is trying to like go cold turkey, quit all drugs and at home, and he has this kind of like hallucination scene that I thought was really well done. And then there's a shot towards the end where someone blows smoke onto another person's face, and the way that's constructed and like the pacing of that scene was awesome because it kind of, that moment kind of like seals the fate for every other character for the rest of the film, and I just thought that was very well done. I do think this film is a little heavy-handed at points, the narration especially. I don't always love films that have like overhead narration that has to be done like in a very specific way for it to not feel, I don't know, cheesy for me, so like I didn't always love that. I suspect that's something that probably worked very well in the book because books are just narration that like just they tried to translate into film that for whatever reason didn't work for me. But overall, I thought this was a well-acted, very like aesthetically tight film. It gets across what it's trying to get across incredibly effectively. Next, I watched for the first time in my adult life, The Matrix, directed by Lillian Lana Wachowski. This is my father's favorite film. He showed it to me when I think I was 6 years old, and I had nightmares for a few months. So I was excited to watch it as a 23-year-old woman and not have nightmares. You've probably seen The Matrix, but this is about Neo, who is a hacker who is kind of recruited by these underground workers who are trying to infiltrate and kind of like take over the Matrix system that is controlling people's lives. I just thought this was a really well done action movie. I know like parts of this movie have been meme-ified since then, but like I think its politics are pretty tight. I think that its aesthetic is like really well established. This is a great film about the trans experience. I don't even think I say that jokingly. I think a lot of writing and talking has been done about this film as trans or queer allegory, which I think is just fucking awesome. And yeah, you don't need me to sell The Matrix to you, but I enjoyed this. I think I said I gave this 4 stars, but if I didn't say that already, give this 4 stars. Really liked it. Next I watched Persepolis, directed by Marjane Satrapi and Vincent Paranod? I did not look up how to pronounce that, fuck. Anyways, this is an animated film adapted from the graphic novel. This is about Margie, who is growing up in 1970s Iran as she witnesses the Iranian Revolution of 1979, and then she grows into adulthood, and young adulthood. I thought that the animation style was stunning. The original graphics are stunning, and like it's pretty much the same style of graphic. I saw some people online call this like obnoxious or overwrought, which I just can't understand at all. I think the story was very beautiful. I think knowing it's based on a real story, beautiful boy, like this is how you fucking do it well. This is how you tell a story with a lot of emotion, but I don't know, do it justice? There is a lot of history interwoven into this story, and I think it tells both its personal narrative and the overarching politics and history very well. I am very bad at history, or shall I say, like, history is not one of the things I'm incredibly knowledgeable about. I'm ashamed of this. I want to start reading more. Like, I want to get into reading history books, but whatever. So I felt, as someone who did not have a lot of context or knowledge about, like, the Iranian Revolution, I thought this did a very good job at explaining those things without being heavy-handed and also telling its story, just like all wrapped up in very good ways. Next, I watched Rebel Without a Cause, directed by Nicholas Ray, and I gave this, you guessed it, 3.5 stars. This is about a troubled teen played by James Dean who has just moved to a new town, and his trouble-making times continue. He kind of befriends sort of a social outcast, and he has a crush on this girl who has a boyfriend, and the boyfriend challenges him to a drag race, and things go very awry from there. I think the film itself is pretty good, but I think this is almost more interesting historically than it is aesthetically or filmically, kind of as like a time capsule of teen culture and teen aesthetics at the time. I think it's just like very interesting to see like this is what people were interested in. Though on a filmic level, I do think it does some very good things. I love the first scene. You're introduced to those three core characters of James Dean character, his friend, and the girl, because they're all at the police station, and you kind of like see snippets of them with family and with police, and then like it obviously like then you see them at school or whatever, and I just thought that was a very interesting narrative device. But yeah, this was a film I thought was good, but just not great. It never reached that level for me. Again, I think a lot of the films I watched this month I thought were good. They were good, but I don't know how much are gonna stick with me, and sometimes that's just for like intangible reasons, and yeah, I can't tell you anything bad about this film. It was good. But a film that will stick with me, my favorite film I watched this month was Spirited Away, directed by Miyazaki. I gave this 5 stars, and this is just as good as everyone always told me it would be. This is about a young girl named Chihiro who is about to move into a new place with her family, but they go and kind of try to explore this abandoned amusement park, and she and her family get trapped there. Her parents get mysteriously transformed into pigs, and then she finds herself trapped amongst this dreamlike, mysterious world of spirits, at which she is the only human being. This is the second Miyazaki film I've seen. I watched Lupin the Third a couple years back because my boyfriend and I were gonna try to watch them all in order, and that just never happened. But the animation style of this is so stunning. I love that this film is not afraid to get weird, to get dark. It's serious in ways that I think would be perfect for children, but also are perfect for adults. And I think what really like got me hard in the emotions about this film is this girl. She displays so much courage and kindness like in the midst of this dreamlike world she does not understand, and she receives so much kindness in turn, and like there's so much happening around her that is scary and horrifying and new and unexplicable and dreamlike. I don't know, for like this whole universe just feels like something that would happen in a young girl's nightmare, and she just displays so much bravery, and I'm so proud of her. There's this one scene in the sky on a dragon, and I cried so much. If you've seen this film, you know what I'm talking about. I could not contain myself. There were some tears that had happened, and then that happened, and I lost it. It was so beautiful. I think this is touching and never feels cheap. Everything feels so earned. The characters are rich. The universe is so rich. Its themes are fascinating. Again, like I feel like I would get something from this if I was a kid and saw it, and I feel like I would get even more because there are things that I can see in it as an adult that probably would have like gone over my head if I was a kid. It's just incredible. I can't wait to watch more of his films because like, yeah, it's just so good. Next, I kind of watched this over the course of the week, The History of the Seattle Mariners, directed by John Boyce. I gave this 4.5 stars, and let me explain what this is. The History of the Seattle Mariners is a 6-part documentary on YouTube about the Seattle Mariners. It is made using graphs on like Google Charts or something? Oh shit. I totally don't remember what the software is called, but like basically you just have this chart as information slowly gets put on the screen, and there is an overlay narration, and you get the history of the Seattle Mariners. This team is so weird. I think this would be interesting to people who aren't even interested in baseball, and it is also so well done, partly because like the way the graphics are made is just like so easy to follow, but also captivating. It's awesome thanks to the Mariners, because the Mariners are fucking weird. And the narration is very well done. It is, again, like, it's not difficult, it's very conversational, but also very professional. I love baseball, so I love this, but I really would recommend this to anyone who likes documentaries or statistics or baseball or, even none of those things, because the Mariners are, like, it's a story about love of a thing in spite of it all. Next, in theaters, I saw The Card Counter, directed by Paul Schrader. I originally gave this 3 stars and then bumped it up to a 3.5. Let's tell you what it's about. This is about an ex-military, an ex-convict man who is now a card player and a card counter. And then he gets approached by a young man whose father committed suicide, and he is searching revenge on their higher-up, because the card counter and the father who committed suicide had the same higher-up, and so the young man wants the card counter's help in finding that higher up and killing him. I didn't love watching this film. I think there were some things on the enjoyment level that kind of missed the mark for me. I think it felt way longer than its runtime. I think some of the acting performances were abysmal. Tiffany Haddish was not good in this film. And I felt that at times it kind of lacked momentum, not in a way that felt intentional. But I think on kind of a larger political, cultural scale, I think this film is doing so many things that are so interesting that it's worth it. And I feel like if I rewatch the film, because this was a film like I thought about for a long time afterwards, I feel like if I rewatched it, I'd be able to kind of pick up on more of those like political, global themes that are so interesting. This way this kind of deals with like military responsibility is just very fascinating in a way that I feel like is kind of brave to tackle and that I don't think I've seen other films tackle. So I would recommend it. First Reformed is one of my favorite films of all time. It's probably in my top 5. And so I will certainly return to The Card Counter in the future and give you my thoughts about it then. Next we have Lost in Translation, directed by Sofia Coppola. I gave this 4 stars, but I can see it kind of jumping up to a 4.5 in the future. This is about 2 lost souls who are currently in Tokyo. One of them is played by Bill Murray, who is an actor who is like doing a commercial deal over in Tokyo, and one of them is played by a young Scarlett Johansson, whose boyfriend is a photographer, and she's there kind of just like to tag along. The boyfriend at a part of the film goes off to like do a shoot for a week, and so Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson kind of make this connection and spend time together in Tokyo. They kind of find solace in the familiarity of each other. I think the Lost in Translation part of this film is that they're in this culture and amidst this language that they do not understand, and so they see a commonality in each other because of their communal confusion, lostness, dissatisfaction, and desire for brief glimpses of beauty and joy. I think I love that like the nature of this relationship is never explicitly stated or even really explored. They have some kind of connection. Is it platonic, romantic, deep, spiritual? Like, it doesn't really matter, because I feel like they are just going over each other's heads. What they need from each other is a brief escape from this pervasive loneliness that each other is feeling, this isolation that they are feeling, especially in this country that they know nothing about. And like, I don't even know if either of them are like good people. They are sometimes annoying. I feel like Bill Murray's character is frequently racist. I just feel like they're not, it's tough to even see what they see in each other outside of the fact that they provide for each other this escapism from their life. And I just find that kind of relationship so interesting. I love art about people who have no business knowing each other. I love art about hotels, about chance encounters. I'm thinking of like 3 Colors Red, where like 2 people who have nothing to do with each other have this like absolutely insanely interesting relationship. And yeah, just like every film about people who just like have nothing to do with each other. And this is in that category, and I think it's awesome, and I can't stop thinking about it. Next I watched The Assassin, directed by Ho Shou Shen. I gave this 3 stars, which was sad because I wanted to like this and it kind of just fell flat for me. This is about a female assassin in the Tang Dynasty who falls in love with one of her prospective targets. This film is so slow. It is so slow, and its cinematography is gorgeous, and that's about all I've got. I don't mind films where nothing happens. I don't mind films that are slow. I have loved films that are both slow, nothing happens, but this just felt a little bit too much like style over substance, like I was flipping through a photo album instead of watching a film, because I don't feel like the story was really captivating enough to keep you watching, and you can't just have a film on pretty pictures alone. I've heard really good things about a lot of his other films. I'm excited to check them out, but like when I choose films to watch, I go by like the most popular film, and so this was that. So unfortunately, my first experience with his films was not amazing, but that does not deter me from checking out some of his other stuff. In the home stretch, we have two films that I enjoyed and gave 4 stars. So first we have I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang, directed by Mervyn LeRoy, and I gave this 4 stars. This was on my radar because I've seen another film by this director, Gold Diggers of 1933, but this film seems very underseen and underappreciated, so let me tell you what it's about. This is about a young World War I vet who has just come back from being at war, and like he wants to get his life started. He doesn't want to work at the factory that his father worked at, but then so he goes off, he tries to live his life, but he gets falsely accused of robbery. He's with someone who attempts an armed robbery, and he gets implicated in that. And so he goes to jail and is forced to be a part of a chain gang, and I know this might seem a spoiler, but given the title of the movie, I feel like it's okay for me to tell you, he escapes, and then the film is dealing with just all of that. All parts of that is what the film is about. I feel like this is one of the most progressive films I've ever seen, and it came out in like 1932. It is just like this bleak and biting film about prison conditions, and also about like the general state of being like stuck, about like how kind of, not like every single state is a prison, but like when he was, when he was in the army, he felt this sense of being stuck, and when he was gonna have to work at the factory, he felt the sense of being stuck, and again, literally on a chain gang, you are stuck, and I feel like it explores those states so intricately. I also feel like the sound design of this film is awesome. I feel like it feels very metallic. Obviously, a lot of what they're doing when they're on the chain gang is like I think they're like hammering a railroad or something, and so like the sound design really feels as biting as its like political commentary is. Not everything about this film was perfect. There were some subplots that just like were not very developed. He has this romantic subplot when he's out of jail that just felt like very half-baked, but I just, there was enough about this film that I feel like is gonna make me think about this and recommend this for like months on end. And finally, I watched Carrie, directed by Brian De Palma. I gave this 4 stars, and thought this was awesome. It's not my favorite King adaptation, but it is my preferred De Palma because I didn't really like Scarface. This is about an ostracized high school girl named Carrie who is bullied at school and kind of lives in hell at home with her very religious mother, and she discovers she has telekinesis and can kind of use that against the people who are making her life miserable. I do feel like this film is horrifying, but not in like any of the supernatural ways. The horror kind of comes in like watching these scenes of this young girl's life being miserable. Like there's a scene where like all these girls are yelling at her in the changing room after like gym class, and that's horrifying. The scenes with her mother, like there's like, I feel like the camera's often looking up at the mother in this way where like she seems towering and terrifying, and that's really well done. In ways it's less scary and more anxiety inducing. I'm not scared about what's gonna come next, but as scenes are happening, I felt like so tense, almost in like that like watching Uncut Gems way of just like, I am filled with so much tension right now. It is campy and bizarre in a way that I feel like a lot of those early horror movies are, but I feel like this just like displays Carrie's predicament so well, and it's just like a very well done horror movie. I'm glad I finally got to see this. So those are the 15 films that I watched in September. Again, it was like a pretty neutral month, but we've got a new favorite, and that's all that really matters. Let me know what you think of any of these films that I mentioned, if you have any similar thoughts or any disagreeing thoughts. That is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching, and you will see me in the next one. I'm always curious if when YouTubers say like this video, if that actually does anything to the stats. So if you've made it to the end of this video, please give it a like. Let's see if that does anything statistically significant.